All right, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Empowering You webinar. My name is Stacy Wallace. Tonight, we are going to actually have one of the top member support leaders in the field join us and share with us three important things that everyone must know about Solavei mobile service in order to create that great experience. So tonight I want to welcome with us Jeremy Wells. He has been a phenomenal leader, social networker. Of course, many of you know Laura Wells. She's so great, has a heart for helping people, not only on their team, but really across the broad spectrum of Solavei. And tonight, Jeremy is going to be sharing with us three important things that you must know about Solavei's mobile service in order to create that best experience with your network. So please help me welcome to the webinar, Jeremy Wells. Jeremy, are you with us?
I am. Yes, ma'am.
I encourage you folks, get out pen and paper, take notes, and then remember again, this will be posted live in our Empowered Living .biz website, and you're going to be able to see it in multiple places because we believe this important information is a must see, must listen to webinar that everybody should listen to. So Jeremy Wells, welcome and take it away.
Thank you very much, Stacey. First of all, just let me say it's an honor and a pleasure to be on here tonight to go over discuss some of the things that, like you said, we've been traveling around the country doing for a couple of months now with Social Commerce University. I thank you for leading that and letting us come along behind you. So let me give everybody a quick background on myself here. I'm actually an IT project manager in my day job. I know it's hard to believe with as much as people see me posting around the forums and the Facebook groups, but yes, I actually do have a day job. I've been in the IT world for about 20 years, and before that, I was in the United States Marine Corps. What I really enjoyed about Solavei a year ago when we were introduced to it was the fact that Laura and I could partner with something. You know, she's done some direct sales stuff in the past, and she's done other businesses in the past. But this is the first time that we were able to kind of come together and put our skill sets together, and it has just been phenomenal. Absolutely adore her. I love her to death. Some of you guys get to see her every week. I get to see her every day, so I'm the winner there. And I'm very happy that she's my sponsor and hope to see her to be a social executive here really soon. Just to add to all of that, as much as I have been in the IT world and I enjoy technology and new phones, a year ago I was actually one of those customers who, you know, every 2 years would get an upgrade with AT&T. I would take my phone in and have them switch out everything for me. I would turn around and walk out the door, and every month I'd get a bill for like, you know, $350 a month for our family phone bill, and that was okay with me. So before a year ago, I had no idea what an APN setting was. I had no idea what all the different terminologies were, you know, MVNOs and spectrum and bands, and so I know some people have had to hear all of these different terms, and what I enjoyed was going ahead and delving myself into all of those things and learning them. I actually don't spend a lot of time signing people up for Solavei. My wife can do that for the both of us. But it did free me up to go ahead and spend some time digging into the technology behind our mobile service proposition so that I could kind of serve our group in that capacity, and it's kind of grown from there. So why are we talking about retention? We're only a year-old company. But here's the deal. It's mobile service, and there's a reason why AT&T, Sprint, Verizon, and T-Mobile spend billions of dollars every year. It's actually just to switch people from one carrier to the other. So they're spending a lot of money trying to pull over a few people from one carrier to the other. All of these terms here are things that, you know, we deal with on a daily basis when we talk about Solavei. We may not know why they're there or what they are, but I can assure you after you hear every single one of these, you're probably going to look like the guy in the picture here. It gets a little confusing, and I will tell you, I am not a cell phone expert. There are many people who've been in the cell phone industry for many, many years who know far more about all this than I do, and that's okay. I just kind of picked what we needed to know to help our network grow, and to make sure people had a good experience. So I'm going to delve into a couple of these, but basically, out of everything you're going to hear tonight, we're going to boil this down to three things that I found that are going to keep people happy and paying customers for the mobile service proposition that Solavei has. So what are we? What is an MVNO? Well, an MVNO is a mobile virtual network operator. All that means is they resell a larger network's mobile service. There are really only 4 carriers in the United States. You've got Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile, and AT&T. Now, there are a lot of MVNOs out there that are reselling those services. So you may have seen some of these: Simple Mobile, Cricket, Boost, Net10. Metro PCS used to be another carrier. Now that T-Mobile has bought them out, they are actually in the process of flipping that over into T-Mobile's GSM network. And we're down there at the bottom, Solavei. So we are an MVNO of T-Mobile. What are the differences here? The technologies behind 2 of the companies are very similar. The technology behind the other 2 companies are different from that. So T-Mobile and AT&T are what we call GSM carriers. GSM phones use a SIM card. Sprint and Verizon are CDMA carriers. They do not use SIM cards, for the most part, in their phones for their service. The reason that I want to point that out is that simply you don't want to end up sticking a square peg into a round hole. Since we are a part of T-Mobile and we're partnered with T-Mobile, that makes us a GSM MVNO, which means you want to make sure that that's the route you're going for people, because the technology behind Sprint and Verizon and how their towers work and how their communication is sent from phone to tower and back to phone again is completely different than what we use. So now that we know we want to stick, at least to begin with here, and we'll get into some Sprint and Verizon exceptions here in a little bit, that we want to stick with T-Mobile and AT&T, there are some differences between T-Mobile and AT&T. Now, they're competitors. They are trying to take each other's customers, and they work off different technology in and of itself. So here's just a quick glance at what the complete differences are. Our T-Mobile network communicates for that 3G and 4G speed on your phone across 2 bands of the spectrum, the 1700 and 2100 bands. If you do not have both of those, your phone is going to then drop down to one of those spectrums in the 2G network to communicate. And the reason why I say you need both is that we send data up on the 1700 and down on the 2100. So if it doesn't have both on your phone, you're basically going to have a 2G phone that's communicating on the network. You'll notice that the AT&T specifications for 2G are exactly the same as our specifications for 2G. So one phone from either carrier is going to communicate on that 2G network. The difference is you'll notice the AT&T specifications do not have that 1700 band, and in most cases, AT&T phones only support that 2100 band for LTE, which is faster than 4G and a newer technology. So in this case, again, I kind of liken this to baseball. You've got 2 different leagues in baseball. You've got the National League and the American League, and they both have their own set of rules. In one league, you've got a designated hitter. In the other league, the pitcher actually has to come up and bat. So it's the same sport, but they're different rules for the different leagues, and that's basically the same thing here. AT&T has their rules, T-Mobile has their rules, and they don't necessarily interact with each other all the time. So what can we glean out of that? Well, the bottom line is if you are going to bring a phone onto Solavei service, you're going to want to have a phone that supports 1700 and 2100 for your 3G and your 4G speed. We have a $49 a month plan that is allowing us to have up to 4G speeds on our phones for our month of data. So you want to use a phone that's going to give you 4G data. That way you can get the most bang for your buck for the value of the value proposition. Now, here's the great thing. T-Mobile and AT&T actually discussed a merger a couple of years ago, and the FCC shot it down. There were some other regulations that they didn't like. And so part of that deal was that if the merger didn't go through, AT&T had to pay T-Mobile several $billion. T-Mobile said thank you very much when that merger didn't go through, and they decided they were going to take a lot of that money and they were going to spend it refarming their towers. Now, what does a refarm mean? Basically what they're doing is their 2G spectrum, which is old technology. 3G and 4G is newer, it's faster. Their 2G spectrum on their towers isn't being utilized because most people don't have 2G phones. They have 3G and 4G phones, and so there's a lot of bandwidth there that they can use. So T-Mobile decided, well, we'll take half of that bandwidth on some of these towers, and we'll actually allow the 1900 band to communicate with the towers and back to the phones. That means for every tower T-Mobile refarms for that 1900 band, an AT&T phone that doesn't support the 1700, 2100 bands will still get 3G and 4G speeds on our network. This actually makes us more competitive because AT&T is not changing their towers to accept the 1700, 2100 band. So as this refarm is going through, you'll start to notice that people can report their AT&T speeds with their AT&T phones, get more than 2G, get 3G and 4G speeds, which is great for us because we're going to be able to do something that other people cannot. So let me tell you a quick story. You sign up for Solavei. You may not know all of the things behind everything that we do in the technology and the cell phone industry, and I don't recommend anybody become a cell phone expert unless you absolutely want to go down that route. You really want to spend your time doing what's best for your business. So you want to spend time signing people up. I get to have Laura do that in spades for us, so I get to be freed up to spend my time learning some of the technology and figuring out how to help people get their phones set up and get the right phones, etc. So you sign up, you post on Facebook, one of your friends decides, hey, that looks pretty cool. You say, fine, you've got an AT&T phone, let's go ahead and enroll you. You click on the Enroll Now button on your link, and you check out the coverage map for where they live. And the first thing you see is, well, in this area, it's mostly dark green. You're going to get excellent coverage with that AT&T phone. And so you go ahead and enroll them and go through the entire process. And about 2 weeks later, you go into your back office and you see their account is closed. And you wonder why. So you run over to their Facebook page, and they've made a post about how they switched over to Solavei. Their phone ran at 2G. They couldn't send an MMS picture message. They had dropped calls. They couldn't even connect to Facebook. And so there was a gap there that caused what I would call a negative ripple. So not only are you going to have to fight a fact that we're becoming a brand that's being known and carrying that brand, but you're now going to have to fight the negative stigma that they've spread out to their friends, because when you click on that enroll button, this is a T-Mobile coverage map for Solavei. So understand that this coverage map automatically assumes you have a phone that supports 1700 and 2100. So if you use this coverage map with an AT&T phone or another world phone or international phone, this isn't going to give you a true representation of what kind of service you can expect on Solavei. So I just want to make sure that's said again, because I think this is one of the most important things we can do, is that if you're using a T-Mobile phone or a phone that specifically states it supports 1700 and 2100, this coverage map will tell you what kind of an experience you can get. Any phone that doesn't support those two bands, this coverage map is not going to give you what you want to tell a customer whether they're going to have a good experience and a good service and a good coverage area. So what can you do if they have an AT&T phone and you want to sign them up and you've gone through this whole process? There's a place that we can go, and it's a website called airportal.de. It's a crowdsourced website where people have basically come together and said, I have a 1900 band phone, and I'm traveling through such and such area, or I live in such and such area, and my phone's picking up 3G and 4G speeds on T-Mobile's network. And so what they do is they go ahead and pin the map here and say, I was in this area, and my 1900 band phone got 3G, 4G service. So this would be some place to start. Now understand, not everybody in the world knows about this website, and not everybody then who does know about it is posting with an AT&T phone or a 1900 band phone and saying they got 3G service. So it's typically underreported for what the refarm is actually doing, but it will give you a really great idea of whether that phone will even get any kind of 3G service in any of those areas. In the areas where they're not pinned, typically when you drive outside of those areas with that 1900 band phone, it's going to then immediately drop down to those 2G spectrum bands and communicate on 2G. I'd just like to get into one more section here about the difference between 2G and 3G and 4G. So 2G was the original technology that we're all using to communicate with when we picked up a cell phone and called somebody, or we sent a standard, what we call SMS message, which is a regular text message with no pictures or video or audio attached to it at all. The technology, even Twitter was built on 140 characters, which is a text message. The 2G spectrum was never designed to handle the amounts of data that modern smartphones are actually using. And to be honest with you, the modern smartphone didn't even come out until 2007 with the first iPhone. And ever since 2007, all four carriers have basically been playing from behind, trying to catch up to be able to handle the amount of data demands that our modern smartphones are actually trying to get across the cellular network. So while a phone works, and I say, that word loosely, works, if you're connected at 2G with a $700 smartphone, it's a frustrating experience for a lot of people. Now, again, it's what your customer is willing to accept, but I believe that we need to be the ones to at least set the expectation for the customer, to understand what their phone is going to do for them. If you've got a heavy data user who travels a lot, who's outside of major metropolitan areas, and they want to come over with an iPhone 4 or iPhone 5 from AT&T, look, I'd rather have a happy AT&T customer than an upset and mad Solavei customer. It just may not be a fit for them. Now, you can switch it out, get a T-Mobile version of the phone, and your coverage is going to be a lot better across the U.S. And so, the bottom line, and I've said this before, is that I believe there's really only three reasons people leave Solavei. And the first one is just the fact of the world the way it is today and the economy is that some people just can't afford to pay their bill every month. If you've got to make a decision between paying your phone bill or putting food on the table, look, I understand. There's nothing wrong with that. And those are the people that we're trying to help with doing what we're doing. And I believe that's really what the vision of Ryan Works was in the first place. And that's okay. But second, you've got some people who have what I call shiny object syndrome. Another carrier got a brand new phone. The Note 3 is coming out at the end of the month. And it comes, ready to connect into a smartphone watch that Samsung's putting out. And somebody literally can't afford to pay, $700, but they absolutely have to have that phone. Well, they'll go sign a 2-year contract and subsidize their phone over 2 years and pay twice as much for it. But they're willing to do that, and you can't do anything about that either. The third group is people that I believe are slipping through the cracks that we actually have responsibility for. And those are people who aren't getting the experience that they should because we're not doing our job enough to tell people what kind of experience they're going to have. And so people will not leave Solavei for a better deal because I'm telling you across the entire U.S., there's not a single carrier out there, there's not a single MVNO out there that's offering a better monthly deal for what we get for $49 a month. They're just not. They can claim they're offering X, Y, and Z, but the amount of data, talk, and text that we get for $49 a month can't be beat. They're not leaving for a better deal, but they will leave for a better experience. And when I say that, I just mean that if their MMS doesn't work, and it did on AT&T, they'll go back to AT&T because that's what they've come to expect from their cell phone. So I think if we do our job to make sure people have the correct experience on Solavei, they're not going anywhere. We talked to a lot of people when we traveled across the country who, raised their hand when we asked how long they were with their previous carrier. Some people were with, companies for 15, 18 years. And I believe the same thing is going to happen with Solavei. But they need to have the correct experience on the network for them to want to continue to pay their bill every month and stay on the service. And so we'll get to the actual settings for some of these things here in a few minutes. But again, I just want to repeat that. People aren't going to leave for a better deal, but they may leave for a better experience. So how do you have the best experience? 1, put them in the right coverage map. 2, if you're bringing a phone over from any other carrier, it needs to be unlocked. If you put a Solavei SIM card into a non-T-Mobile phone, the first thing it's going to do when you boot it up is come up with a lock screen and ask you for your unlock. Any phone that is a T-Mobile phone, we'd actually do recommend that you go ahead and unlock that phone too. The simplest reason for me is overseas travel. If you go to Mexico or Canada or you actually go anywhere else, the world right now is predominantly GSM, which is actually a tougher sell for people on Sprint and Verizon because our phones will work if they're unlocked in any other country that uses GSM, and theirs won't. So it's nice for us to be able to take our phone, slip a prepaid SIM card, from Italy into the phone while we're in Italy and use our phone, come back to the U.S., put our Solavei SIM back in, and keep going. It's only going to do that if it's unlocked. So how do you get it unlocked? Well, if you're off contract and you don't owe anything on your phone to your original carrier, you can typically call them. They may have you fill out some documentation, but they'll go ahead and give you the unlock in most cases. It has drastically changed over the last 10 months. I remember we switched from AT&T, and I actually asked in online chat for the unlock codes for 4 of our AT&T phones at the time. It took about 5 minutes. They gave all 4 unlock codes to us, and I was done. It took literally 10 minutes total. Nowadays, they understand that they're bleeding customers, and that's a testament to all of us for what we're doing in Solavei, because we're taking a lot of customers away from them, and they're making it a little more difficult. So if you want to go that route, you can. There's another solution too, which is third-party unlock services. You can be a wholesaler of this. There's a lot of places where you can actually sign up to do your own unlocks. There's a lot of people out there who are already doing this in volume, and so they can offer pretty cheap unlocks. I've seen anything from $2 to $10 to $25, depending on the phone. And obviously, the newer the phone, the more expensive the unlock becomes. But it is a way to do it. Now, if you're going to unlock a T-Mobile phone, you're going to have a different SIM card. You can go to AT&T. You can take a dead AT&T SIM card. It doesn't even have to be an active one. But basically, the phone is going to require a SIM card from a company that it doesn't know already. And so a T-Mobile phone knows the Solavei SIM card. So just to finish that process, you're going to need to get a different SIM card, pop it in, put in your unlock code, put the Solavei SIM back in, and you're ready to go. Stick with what's easy and simple. The easiest and simple route to making sure your customer has the correct experience is to recommend they get a T-Mobile phone to avoid a less than stellar experience on Solavei. And I'm not saying any of these phones won't work. And again, I use the word work in a different context than I would experience. Our international models, AT&T models, some Sprint and some Verizon models. And basically what I'll say to this is the international models typically don't support 1700, 2100 because that's a T-Mobile thing here for the United States. Some manufacturer phones actually make their phones compatible with both GSM and CDMA. They actually put the radios that communicate on both of those spectrums inside the phone. Apple, in this case, is one that does that. Their Apple iPhone 5, they call it a world phone. And so in this case, even the Sprint and Verizon models have a SIM card slot on the iPhone 5. Here's the deal, though. Sprint, they actually refuse to unlock the domestic GSM for those phones. So if you call up Sprint and you say, hey, I want to unlock my phone, I'm traveling outside the country, they'll absolutely do that for you. That's the international GSM. If you tried to slip your Solavei SIM card in that Sprint iPhone 5, at that point, it's still not unlocked for the domestic GSM and it won't work. Verizon actually sells their iPhone 5 unlocked to the GSM side. But here's the deal. That Verizon iPhone 5 still only supports 1900 band. It's basically just like the AT&T model of the phone. So in this case, there's very, very few models. There's a couple of Android devices that Verizon sells as well, unlocked to the GSM. But here's the deal. Stick with what's easy and simple. The easiest and simple route to making sure your customer has the correct experience is to recommend they get a T-Mobile phone. iPhones hold their value, like Jeeps. You can sell one for pretty much what you paid for it and switch over to an actual phone that's going to give you a coast-to-coast better experience. Off to the right here, I just want to show you guys, we do have an IMEI checker. If you do *#06# on your phone and you go to the back office, you can actually check whether your phone is compatible with Solavei service or not. This was for a Samsung Focus that is an AT&T Windows phone I just happened to have sitting on my desk. And I typed it in, and it came back with the message that stated, congratulations, your device will work with Solavei mobile service. You should have great voice, text, and data service at 2G edge speeds. Now, I know there's some chuckles out there, because I actually kind of laughed when I saw this myself. I actually have personally never had great voice, text, and data service at 2 GHz speeds. I've had service at 2 GHz speeds, but trying to do anything besides, make a phone call, it gets quite difficult. So make sure you use the IMEI checker in the back office to verify if you have questions on which phone may or may not work with our service. So what's a SIM card? If you don't know what a SIM card is, it's basically what identifies you to the company. Your phone does not. So in this case, you don't need to worry about telling Solavei whether you've switched phones or not. You don't need to do anything special if you decide to switch from the phone you have to a new phone. Basically, that SIM card is the only thing that's going to tie you to your account. That SIM card needs to move from one phone to the other. So here's the deal. We actually have in our back office the ability to purchase SIM packs that we can provide our customers. And at this point in the industry, there's really only 3 SIM cards. There is a standard SIM, it's also called a mini. There's a micro SIM, which is a little smaller than that. And there's a nano SIM card, which is even smaller. Right now, the only phone on the market that uses a nano SIM is the iPhone 5. There's one coming out here pretty soon that will also support that. But for now, most phones, older phones here, are using that standard SIM card. It's the big one. It's been around forever. The newer phones have moved to the micro, your Galaxy S3s and S4s. Some of the models have moved to that micro SIM card, which is a little smaller. And then Apple was the first to go ahead and put out that nano SIM card for us to use. So just to go back one more step there, we actually activate a SIM card, not a phone. So again, you don't have to tell anybody whether you switch phones or not. That's your business. I think the only other people who would know would be the NSA when you switch your phone. So when you sign up, you can actually ask Solavei to go ahead and give you a new phone number. You can actually tell Solavei you want a new phone number, or you can port your number, which is basically taking your phone number from another carrier, and you can bring it over to Solavei. That, as long as you're not owing anything on the account, the other carrier can't stop you from porting your number. You own the number, and you're allowed to take it with you when you go. So once your SIM card has been activated after the enrollment process, calls and regular text messages should work on your phone without you doing anything at all. You don't need to put in an APN setting. You don't need to change a setting. When you put that SIM card in the phone and it's activated, you should be able to make a call to somebody, and you should be able to send a text to somebody without any issues at all. What you would then need to do after that is set up what we call an APN. So what is an APN? An APN is an access point name, and all it does is it tells your phone and the carrier how to communicate with each other when it wants to send a picture message or when you want to do anything that requires data on your phone. If you want to get on the internet, if you want your email to get dropped down onto your phone, you're going to have an APN setting for your particular phone. Now here's the deal. There's basically 3 different operating systems out there for phones. There are iOS for Apple, there is Android for Google, and there's Windows 8 and Windows 7, 7.5. So there's several different operating systems, and some of those operating systems are running on the same phone based upon the updates that the original carrier allowed to be sent to the phone. And so APN settings, and I think this is where some people get confused, is that APN settings that work on one phone will not always work on the other. So over the past year, I know we've all had some frustrations with APNs, but the tools that Solavei is putting out for us now and over the last couple of weeks are actually going to dramatically increase our ability to just go ahead and set up our APNs on our phones. And the one that I really want to highlight here is the solavei.tweaker.com. You can put in your IMEI number right here. It will pull up the settings for your phone. If it can send them to your phone over, which we call OTA, which is over-the-air settings, it will actually send your phone a configuration message that you can pull from the drop-down menu. You can click the install button. It will ask for the 1, 2, 3, 4 pin, and it will actually install the APN settings for you. You can reboot the phone, and everything should be good. In most cases, it works. We have no issues. Now, understand it's a new tool. Nobody's perfect, no carrier's perfect, and no piece of technology is perfect, and I've learned that over the past 20 years. Technology is ever-changing, and things don't always work. But here's the deal. In the case that we can't send an OTA, it will actually pull up manual settings for that phone for somebody to either write down or follow step by step while they have the phone in front of them. This is a great tool that we really want everyone to use. And here's the deal. If you find a set of settings for a specific phone that doesn't work, corporate wants to fix any issues that it finds, and it doesn't have every single phone on the market sitting in front of them to test APN settings. There's thousands of models of phones. So if we find phones out here in the field that don't work with the APN settings that this tool is providing us, we're going to go ahead and get that feedback to corporate so that they can update the settings, check the settings, and verify they work so that the people coming behind you in that area don't have to deal with the same issues that you did. The next thing that they've given us is actually an app for Android phones that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store. It's the Solavei Phone Setup app, and you can actually install this directly to your phone, to your customer's phone. You can run it, and it's going to be able to provide you settings that you can put right there on the phone. I mean, if it can do them automatically, it will. If it can't, it will give you the manual instructions for you to walk through and set up your phone with those APN settings. We have some phone recommendations, and this list actually came out of a want and a need for people to use phones that we knew worked. It started out as a small list, and then I started buying all the phones on this list and testing them out. But these are all phones that I've had in my hand. I've set the APN settings up, and I know they work 100%. On the left side, you have some T-Mobile phones that are specific to T-Mobile now. The Prism 2, the Lumia 521 and 925, the LG Optimus L9 are pretty much exclusive to T-Mobile. Now, the Google Nexus 4 is an interesting phone on here because it's not put out by T-Mobile. It's actually put out directly by Google. But Google put in support on this phone for the 1700, 2100 band. And so it's they sell it completely unlocked. At this point in time, they were selling it for, I think now they were selling it for $199. Might have actually sold out since they've announced their new one. This is a great phone for our network. I'm actually talking on my Nexus 4 right now. I love the phone. It works great. Plus, you get all the updates from Google immediately without having to wait for your carrier to go ahead and say that it's okay to be sent out to your phone. On the right side, I've got some phones listed here, but I just want to make the distinction. All of them have, T-Mobile in parentheses at the end, and there's a reason for that. The Galaxy S3 and S4 is actually sold by every carrier out there, but they also have different, again, back to the different radios in them to communicate with the network that they were designed and built for. So if somebody says, hey, well, a Galaxy S4 work on Solavei, your next question needs to be, well, what's the original carrier? What does it say on it? Does it say AT&T? Does it say T-Mobile? Does it say Verizon? Does it say Sprint? The iPhone 5 is the same way. There's actually only one iPhone that supports 1700, 2100. It came out April 12th of this year for T-Mobile, and that is the only one that supports all of those bands on our network. Here's what I want to say. You are not the first person to have the problem with your phone. I can assure you that a lot of people are out there playing around with different phones, have different phone models, and they've all tried them on Solavei. So how can you leverage that? The easiest way is to go to support.solavei.com and use that big search bar. It's right in the middle of the screen. Just start typing in the model of your phone, and then put in APN or MMS after the fact. Anything that pops up in that search box that has a green check mark next to it is actually a forum that was discussing that issue where somebody from corporate in the Bellevue, Washington office is actually marked that as a correct answer or has a corrected answer in that field. So you want to go ahead and use those resources to see if anybody else has had the problems that you're having with your phone that's already solved them, and use those as a good resource. The second would be Google. All of our support forums are search engine optimized, and so you can actually just go right to Google and type in, Galaxy S4 APN Solavei. The first 4 or 5 responses you're going to get in Google are probably right from the support forums or other users that have had that issue, and you can go ahead and find your answer there as well. Facebook groups are great, whether you're in a team group or whether you've got other people that you're friends with in Solavei that may have other resources. And then I absolutely recommend the Empowered Living Facebook group. There are a lot of people that are willing to help answer questions. There's some documents in the Files tab at the top of it for, Umail, how to set up a visual voicemail on your phone, and just things that actually make your experience better on the network than the stock phone that you brought from wherever you were at before. So finally, let's get back to the original point of why we talked about all of this. And it's to get retention and keep people into Solavei because they're having the best experience. Like, I don't want to, twist anybody's arm. You have to stay in Solavei. You have to stay in. So I want people to want to be in Solavei, and they're going to want to do that when they're having the best experience possible. So how do you get that? Well, one, it's making sure you have the right phone. You need to make sure you have a phone that supports that 1700 and the 2100 band. That's your number one go-to phone. Do we sign people up in our network with AT&T phones? Absolutely. But we check the correct coverage map, and we also make sure our customer knows exactly what kind of experience they're going to get nationwide, not just maybe in the area that they live. You check where they live, where they work, where they play, where they travel, where grandma lives, because they're going to go there, and you want to make sure that the experience they have on their phone is the best one possible. So yes, we do it, but we want to make sure we set that expectation up front. Again, then you want to have the right coverage. Use the right coverage map for the right phones. Use our coverage map for phones that support that 1721. Use the other coverage maps and people you may know in your network. Hey, we're powered by relationships. Ask around and say, hey, does somebody live in such and such and use Solavei, and what's your experience like? Word of mouth is great. And then the third and lastly, you want to make sure your phone has the right settings. So APN settings are required for data in MMS. If you do not have the correct APN settings, your customer is going to be frustrated, you're going to be frustrated, and it's not going to be the best possible experience. So we're going to use those tools that Solavei's given us, the Tweaker app, the phone setup app in Android, and we're going to make sure everybody has the right phone, the right coverage, and the right settings. And in that case, again, you're going to get that customer who wants to stay with Solavei for 10 and 15 years. Everybody's going to grow this thing and blow it up, and we're going to get to our 1 million members that we need to get to. So I want to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to go over all of these things tonight. Thank you again, Stacy, for letting me be on here, and we will see you online. Thank you.